Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'm going to be taking a look at some post-rotation Lugia Vstar. So I keep forgetting to do this for these videos, but a huge shout out to Justin Basil TCG, he does have his own channel and his own website, for all the proxies used in these videos. Without them, none of these videos would actually be possible, so huge shout outs to him, thank you very much. But yeah, today's focus is going to be about Lugia Vstar. So why might you play Lugia Vstar against all the other decks post-rotation? Well, it has a pretty sizable amount of strengths to look at. Like big one it goes with Cincino is terrifying. We will look at a Cincino translation if you haven't already seen Cincino. It is a very scary new card. Snorlax for additional single price support that can just toss out 180 damage for 3 colorless energy very casually, which is very scary. It's very useful for dealing with single price threats and basically just means that, you don't have to rely on Archops and just Lugia to deal with single prize attackers, like the the Ancient Box decks, for example. Also, Lugia itself can KO basic EX Pokemon. Tempest Dive doing 220 is amazing. It also means that if you get Maximum Belt involved, you can do 270 to a basic EX and KO stuff like Roaring Moon, as well as things like Raging Bolt, which is quite scary. So yeah, Lugia itself is very scary. Also, the effect of attack of being able to discard a stadium card is really good. However, what I will say is there won't be any more Path to the Peak post-rotation to worry about. So it's not like excruciating, but still having some stadium control is quite nice. And Pokemon do like to print their really good stadiums. And there is a good Poison Stadium coming out in Temporal Forces, Dangerous Jungle. So having that option to remove a stadium is, of course, pretty desirable. However, what are the weaknesses of Lugia V-Star? So it does evolve from a 2-prizer, and this really matters a lot more than you might think. So it basically just means that stuff like Charizard, for example, or maybe Charizard's a bad example, actually, but never mind. But a regular deck, if it can throw out 220 damage turn 2, then actually having a Lugia V in play is a bit of a liability. It's effectively like having a Luminion or Squawkabilly on the bench, in that it means that if your opponent just boss KOs Lugia V, they're taking 2 prize cards and they're in a much better position than you are for the rest of the game, basically. It's the equivalent of just KOing a Lugia V star, KOing Lugia V. So that is quite scary in of its right, and it means that if you KO stuff like Charmander against EX Pokemon, for example, then it's not going to have so much of an impact because you still have to take 5 prize cards after that, and it gets a bit awkward when, you have to KO probably 2 Charizards after that on top of another single prize Pokemon. Whereas with Lugia V-Star, it's literally KO the V, KO 1 V-Star, and then 2 single prize Pokemon or just another Lugia. So yeah, can definitely mess up the prize map. Also, there is no Professor Burnett post-rotation. Burnett was a really good supporter that would allow you to search your deck for 2 Archops and discard them, and you could guarantee that with Luminion, turn 1 going second, which is very cool, but sadly that's not going to be an option post-rotation, so yeah, a bit annoying for Lugia V-Star in that sense. However, what are the new support cards for Lugia V-Star? Well, we have Mist Energy that says when this card is attached to a Pokemon, prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon this card is attached to. Existing effects are not removed. Existing effects are not removed, damage is not an effect. So it basically just means, from my understanding at least, Sableye can't actually place damage counters. Now, I know that Lost Zone isn't such a big issue post-rotation. I don't think it's going to be a massive deck by any means. So I guess if you're a Lost Zone fan, then that might be good news for you potentially, depending on how you view it. But either way, Mist Energy will give you some additional protection. The deck does also have Cryptomaniac's Deciphering, which is not the real translation for that, by the way, but Cryptomaniac sounds infinitely cooler. Search your deck for 2 cards, shuffle your deck, and put those cards on top of your deck in any order. Just a nice supporter. You could combine it actually with stuff like Bibarel or the Curlia, but it is there to kind of guarantee Archops, and then you could in theory use stuff like Pokestop to discard Archops after using Cryptomaniac. So it is kind of like a nice option in that sense, and definitely worth trying out at the very least, even if it doesn't end up being optimal, but still quite a nice support option. And then we have Master Ball. Now, there is some very good A specs in Temporal Forces, but why Master Ball is so good is it's just going to guarantee the right Pokemon in the right situation. And honestly, finding stuff like Archeops post rotation is a little bit tricky without stuff like the Codebreaker's Deciphering. There is no evolution incense anymore. You will have to use stuff like either Master Ball or Ultra Ball or regular draw supporters and hope you run into them. So having Master Ball just means that you have yet another way, basically, of finding stuff like Archeops or, Cinccino's, because again, there's actually no level ball post rotation. So yeah. Master Ball, quite a nice option. So Cinccino is the infamous new support card. This attacker does 70 damage for each special energy attached to this Pokemon. So quite a scary single prize threat. This thing with just 2 Archeops in play can then proceed to KO an EX Pokemon that has 280 HP or less. So, we're talking about V-Stars as well. So Giratina goes down, Arceus and Palkia also go down. Very, very scary card. You could also commit less energy, but if you only commit 3 energy, then you're doing 210, which isn't quite enough to get most basic EXs. So I guess that is a downside in that you do have to commit at least 4 energy most of the time. But yeah, Cinccino, very scary card. Also with a maximum belt or just a regular manual attachment does mean you can KO a Charizard, which is, yeah, very scary for Charizard players that Lugia can do that now. So yeah, Cinccino definitely going to be a bit of a threat. So this is the tournament winning list from that tournament name. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it for fear I messed it up horribly. But this is the tournament winning list, so I think this would just be a great template if you're looking to get into Lugia or you're hoping to play Lugia post rotation. I know many of you who have probably already seen this list, but for those of you who haven't, this is the tournament winning list in all its glory. I think it's pretty cool, to be honest. It's basically playing what you'd expect. Capturing Roma, I think, is probably the most interesting thing. Flip a coin of heads, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon. If tails, you find a basic. Just another way of either finding Mincinos, Cinccino's, or Archeops, so just a nice option. Also, Jock, being able to find 2 evolution Pokemon, again, kind of there to find stuff like Archeops. And you do have Luminion V, in fairness, so you could combine that with Ultra Ball and stuff, so that's cool. Also, this deck, funny enough, is playing 2 copies of Serena, which is a supporter you don't really see that often anymore. It says discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and then you draw until you have 5 cards in your hand, which is quite nice. Or you choose the other effect, which is switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon V with their active spot. So it's kind of like another boss's orders, effectively, against stuff like Giratina and Arceus, which is quite nice. So yeah, Serena seems like a pretty decent option. As for the energy, 3 copies of a new Mist Energy, and then the rest is pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, looks like a pretty solid position to start with. However, if you fancy something a bit more experimental, we do have Lugia Iron Hands, because I know that a lot of people were very scared, or at least some vocal people, shall we say, were very scared of Iron Hands going into the set Paradox Rift. However, Lugia is probably the best way to play Iron Hands, I think. Like, Charizard is a bit weird because you have to ramp 3 energy. You have to commit 1 Charizard per Iron Hands. Whereas Lugia, you just have Archeops in play indefinitely until it's KO'd or something. So, also, until you run out of energy to use, of course. But still, quite a nice option. And it does mean that because you're playing Iron Hands with Lightning Energy and Fire Energy with Charizard, this list does get away with playing stuff like Earthen Vessel, which will allow you to discard Archeops from your hand, as well as, of course, finding those basic energy that you play one-offs of, which is quite nice. Again, this list is also playing Jock and Serena, capturing Aroma, so that's pretty cool to see. So yeah, a slightly modified list on the one we just looked at, but again, if you like Iron Hands or Radiant Charizard, then this would be the list for you. But there is some other options, it doesn't just end there. We do have the other A specs, Hero's Cape and Maximum Belt. Hero's Cape giving either a Lugia, a Cinccino, or a Snorlax, or maybe even Archeops if you want to make it a bit tankier. Plus 100 HP, could be quite scary. I think for now, until we work out what is the most consistent list, then Master Ball is still probably your best bet, which is fantastic because Master Ball actually got a reprint from the Black and White era. So hopefully Master Ball isn't super expensive if you're playing Lugia IRL. But there's also Maximum Belt, which says attacks used by this Pokemon do 50 more damage to your opponent's active EX. We talked about this earlier, how this could potentially KO Charizard or other basic EX Pokemon. Yeah, definitely quite scary. And then Morty's Conviction, which is one that I've not really seen used that much in Japan. Basically says you can use this card only if you discard another card from your hand, aka Archeops basically. Draw a card for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's a little bit of a draw supporter, but it's mainly here just to, discard Archeops and act as a draw supporter. 2-in-1 basically. I know Serena kind of fills that role, plus it's sometimes a gust effect, which is nice, but I do like Morty's Conviction a lot, and, I'll be trying out Morty's Conviction in Lugia personally, but, that's just my take on it. But either way, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about Lugia Vstar down below. Is it going to be broken again post-rotation? And yeah, thank you for watching.